Welcome to the beautiful Adriatic Sea. It is known for its clear water, picturesque coastal towns, and the beautiful nature along its shores. Part of this wonderful place is the Bay of Piran, but this spot is only idyllic at first glance. In reality, the Bay of Piran is part of a long conflict between two countries, Croatia on one side and Slovenia on the other. Here in the water, the two countries are separated by a border, but the problem is that both states have been arguing about where exactly this border runs for decades. And to this day, no final solution has been found. This unusual border conflict, which is actually just about a few kilometers of water right behind me, is politically highly charged. It's also about national identity, and it's also about a very important access to the sea. And in this video, I'd like to tell you more about it. This is the story of the Bay of Piran. Okay, here we are at the Bay of Piran. Take a look here, clear blue water, 31 degrees. But yeah, this is also the place where a very complicated border conflict is going on for decades. And I hope I figured it out right on the map, but this place right here should be quite clear because this is still Slovenia. But if you take a look over here, right behind me, this is already Croatia, and that's where the whole situation gets quite complicated. And to find out what exactly the problem is and how it all started, we have to go back to the 1990s. For many decades, both Slovenia and Croatia belonged to Yugoslavia. That is the main reason why the water border is so unclear today. During that time, borders between the Yugoslav republics simply didn't matter that much, and hardly anyone thought about them. At the time, Yugoslavia was a state made up of 6 republics: Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Montenegro and Macedonia. However, the internal political situation was shaped by national conflicts from the start. The country struggled economically, and religious tensions between Orthodox, Catholic and Muslim communities added to the instability. The death of the Yugoslav leader Tito in 1980 left a power vacuum. This led to national movements which resulted in Slovenia's independence in 1990. Croatia followed a few months later. What followed were the Balkan Wars, which lasted until 2001. In Slovenia, the war ended quickly. In Croatia, the fighting was much harder. But by 1995, also Croatia gained its full independence. With this new independence, however, Slovenia and Croatia faced new challenges. The problem was the old administrative borders in the old Yugoslavia were never really established as strict international borders. So at many places between Slovenia and Croatia, the border situation became pretty unclear. A commission identified a total of 53 disputed locations along the border in 1992. Most of these border disputes have been resolved over the years. However, the dispute over the Bay of Piran continues to this day. Of course, both countries use history to support their claims, arguing about which part of the bay belonged to whom in the past. But that is very complex and I think also not the main point today. Slovenia's main argument today is that it controlled the bay during the Yugoslav era, so things should stay as they were. There is also an economic factor. For Slovenia, a country with a very short coastline of only 46 to 50 kilometers, access to international waters is vital. Without this access, Slovenia would always have to cross Croatian or Italian waters to reach the high seas. This is crucial for the port of Koper, Slovenia's most important economic hub. And that is why the country insists that the border should run here. Croatia, on the other hand, which has a coastline of 1,800 kilometers, sees it differently. The country intends to apply classical international maritime law. According to this law, the border between two countries generally runs along the equidistance line, which means in the middle of the bay. Well, and this disagreement has been a point of contention since the independence of both countries. There have been negotiations time and again, but a solution was never found. However, then the year 2001 came. The prime ministers of Slovenia and Croatia signed an agreement. It said that Slovenia would get about 80% of the Bay of Piran and a corridor to international waters. Slovenia accepted the deal, but it failed in Croatia. The Croatian prime minister could not get enough support, also because nationalist voices were raised, rejecting the so-called sale of Croatian territory. The situation got even worse. In December 2008, Slovenia used its position as an EU member to block Croatia's negotiations to join the European Union. Slovenia argued that Croatia had used documents that already defined the border in their favor. This blockade put massive pressure on Croatia. In November 2009, however, there was a breakthrough with the mediation of the EU. Both countries, Slovenia and Croatia, signed an arbitration agreement, and a court was supposed to decide about this unclear border here. The court was set up in 2012 and hearings began in 2014. But in 2015, the next problem appeared. Media reports revealed secret talks between the judge appointed by Slovenia and a Slovenian official. Croatia felt the court was no longer neutral and pulled out of the process. This, of course, was a huge blow to the process. However, the court decided to continue anyway. It ruled that while Slovenia had broken the rules, it wasn't serious enough to cancel the whole agreement. And on June 29, 2017, the final ruling was announced. The court gave Slovenia about 80% of the Bay of Piran. Even more importantly, it created a 2.5-mile wide corridor to give Slovenia access to international waters. Well, Croatia, however, as you might guess, did not accept this decision for the reasons already mentioned. Until today, the country says that the whole process was not independent and therefore not valid. This has consequences, especially for the fishermen in the region. Since then, both Slovenian and Croatian police boats have been patrolling the disputed waters. Fishermen who have worked there for decades are now given warnings or heavy fines by the other side. Over 450 cases from Slovenian fishermen against Croatia and over 800 cases from Croatian fishermen against Slovenia were sent to the European Court of Human Rights. But so far, the European courts have not really intervened in this case. In 2020, the European Court of Justice said it was not responsible for the case because its job is not to set borders. In 2024, the Human Rights Court also rejected the fishermen's claims, saying they should have known the consequences of their actions under Croatian law. Which means the conflict in the Bay of Piran is much more than a fight over just a few square kilometers of water. It also shows how deep national identity and history still run, even inside the European Union. So, the Bay of Piran is a beautiful place for a holiday, but it is also a reminder of a conflict that is far from over. Okay, that's it. That was my video about the Bay of Piran and the unusual border conflict between Slovenia and Croatia. And if you're wondering now, what kind of background is that? Well, I've booked a small holiday house here in Slovenia. It looks a bit old school, but it has an air condition. That's great, because it's a super hot day today, 32 degrees, 33 maybe, yeah. Anyway, if you liked this video, please leave a thumbs up. You can also hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you won't miss any upcoming video. And if you'd like to support me and my work, you can also do that, for example, on Patreon. There's a link down in the description, or you can become a channel member on my YouTube channel. Then you will also get exclusive stuff and new videos before everyone else, so you should check that out. And that's it for today. Have a safe journey. See you next time.